Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook. Make sure you download the app and use the promo code CHGO when you sign up. Mr. Cody Del Mendo has already been riding off into 2023, but we are still here. One more show for us, at least, before 2023. Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Jared Willis filling the seat right down there for Mr. Del Mendo. Thanks for coming in, by the way.
Last live show of 2020.
Yeah,
Happy to be
good to have
here,
Jared here.
even though my shoe game is not as strong.
Yeah, but like
right.
Lacoste, it's
That
very
Lacoste
nice.
is comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Better than Crocs.
They get the job done.
better than Crocs
Better
for
than
sure. Thanks to everybody in the
Sorry,
chat
Mike
waiting
Dubs. I
around.
know you like your Crocs, but Lacoste is better.
Pitch Doctor will be joining us, I believe, possibly by the end of the podcast. How
Oh, is
about
that
that?
happening? Oh, okay.
A little something for you. We're also going to be doing 10 key moments and maybe a few extra bonus ones from 2022. We know it was a long year
Yep.
for many reasons. But there were a few that you want to take out, highlight, and not forget. So we're going to go through some of those, and we'll make some New Year's resolutions before the end of the show as well. Large national news. You're telling me Pele died?
Pele did die about
Yeah.
20 minutes ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Soccer.
news just broke.
It's just announced. He might have died 30 minutes ago.
Well, and
Well,
The
ESPN,
news broke.
news,
15 or 20
yeah,
minutes
ESPN
ago.
tweeted
Yeah.
it out about
Let's
15,
hope
20
that-
minutes ago.
Sean says, where's the Del Softo guy? Cody late again. Mick Kenatur says, Grandpa Stuckey must have issues parking his walker.
It's Mick Baconator.
McBaconator?
Bacon.
But I like the way
Yeah,
you
Oh.
say it.
McBaconator.
Baconator.
Okay.
McBaconator.
All right.
I got it.
See, I didn't get that either.
No,
last
I
time.
was here this morning for the CHGO podcast with
Rachel.
Lawrence.
Rachel's in the chat says free the Crocs. I
Hey,
disagree.
Rachel's here.
I disagree.
I saw her video on the
Yeah.
social media account again today.
If you haven't seen it, go on CHGO Cubs on Twitter.
I just
Rachel
watched
and
it
Mike.
yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, Rachel and Mike from Cubs Fans UK, I think is the
Now,
account.
see, I just put together this list of 10 moments.
Yeah, there's another one.
Rachel's
that's a
trip from
moment.
London
That's a
could have
big
been in
one.
our
Yeah.
top 10.
that may be the number one fan moment of the year.
If it's the CHGO Cubs list, which I guess we could still do as we get into 2023,
Right.
Rachel coming in studio, that would be in the top 10,
We don't even have to do. We can just do like
along with the ice cream social.
on March 4th on our 1 year anniversary. We could just do our top 10 moments of
Of
our
our
first year at
year.
CHGO.
Yeah.
That's when
There
we're
we go.
saving it.
There we go.
That's when we're saving it. Because there's going to be some time filling
Teamwork.
there.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
There's some time filling going on
Let's
in
do
there.
it.
I was wondering, can you guys tell me when is the right date to cut off the binge eating? I was asking this to Kevin earlier. Like, I've had a solid
Yeah.
week. Like, at what point does that become unhealthy to you? You know, like, listen, I'm not one of these guys that says have a salad every day, and if you eat a cookie, your body is the temple type thing.
I eat a
Enjoy
lot
a
of
cookie
cookies.
now and then. It's not
Right.
it's not going to be the end of the world. But when you're doing what I've been doing for the last week, where it's like 10 cookies a day
Yeah.
and some ice cream and some custard, and then maybe a couple more cookies. At what point does it become harmful, and what time should I be cutting this off? Before January 1st?
I know. I think you give yourself through the first.
Because I feel a little sluggish.
Yeah. I mean, maybe lighten things up today, tomorrow, but then
Right.
you got New Year's Eve, even New Year's Day. New Year's Day is one of my favorite days to just be like really
around.
lazy, lay
Yeah.
around.
Even though the bowl games are,
Yeah. I'll kind of
Yeah.
put those on, whatever.
yeah, but
but
wait, this is another year where the CFP is on the 31st, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
It
it
is.
is
That's right.
because
It's
Oh.
on
well,
Saturday.
I was gonna say
That's
like
right.
thankfully
Cannot stand when they do that. It
Yeah.
ruins so much about January 1st.
Well,
Yeah.
Thankfully, the first also falls on a football Sunday, so at least you have a reason to be
So then-
lazy all
right.
day.
You can
Oh,
watch
right,
some
we
NFL
have to watch
on
the
Sunday.
Bears
but-
on January 1st.
oh, Del Softo is, Del Mendo is chiming in. Mizzou fans continue to not leave me alone.
Suckmeyer.
It's all the guy in the middle's fault.
decked out over here.
Yeah. Cody took the day off, and he can't be without us.
Yeah. Here he is. He's dedicated. He's still here in the chat.
I'd say he's a
I wouldn't
diehard.
be
he's also-
surprised if he took that
he's a
link
man of the
and
people.
showed up here.
He's
before
also
the show.
slandering me in the chat right now. But you know what? Maybe his team shouldn't have lost to Mizzou, and then it wouldn't have mattered, right? So
Sean Caselli, all the memories we've made this year.
all the places we'll go.
It was a
next
tough
year.
season. We've had fun here at CHGO. So we're going to do this chronologically. It's not a top 10 list. I want to do it in order of kind of the way the year unfolded for us. And we don't start that until March for us because we didn't exist until March 1st or 2nd, something like that.
4th.
Because my birthday
was
is the
March
6th,
4th.
and it was
March
like
4th.
March 4th.
March 4th.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. March 4th was the anniversary.
That was
Birthday
the
of
official
Chicago.
launch.
That's
day.
right, March
Yeah.
4th. So
1837, Chicago becomes a city.
tanks.
There you go.
I think.
And then all the sports teams started tanking after that. March 10th, the lockout ends. And that was a big day for us because we were sitting on these podcasts thinking, are we going to have to do this 5 days a week into July before this lockout ends? Like, how long can you do the best list of Cubs first baseman? Or
Right.
how long can you talk about nothing before you lose your mind?
We were like planning a bunch of snake drafts that we could possibly do.
Well, we're going to do some of those this offseason.
will,
But we were thinking it might be like 6 months.
Well, and especially when you're a brand new show trying to get started, get an audience, like it's not the most exciting content.
Well, it was funny because it was like, Cubs and Sox obviously affected by the lockout. Bears were blowing up the team at that point. The Bulls were like the hope, but then that was at that point where they were on their downfall.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it was a microcosm of what Chicago sports were in 2022.
Yeah.
Like it was very disappointing all around. But even at that point, you're like, man, how are we going to do this when there's there's nothing to draw the eyeballs in? But obviously the people that have been here since day one, and the people that haven't been here since day one, anyone that's tuned in even once, has made it possible. But that
was an exciting day when that lockout ended. And added to the enjoyment of the day for me was the fact that Jeff Passan's Twitter account was hacked day.
That's
I
right.
felt bad for him
That's
because
right.
of all the days to have that happen.
Yeah.
You know, when the biggest baseball news of the year is breaking, and some NFT thing hacked his account. I did feel bad for the guy, but I can't lie, I was laughing.
It was kind of funny. Hello to Niren is there. Sean is here. Gary's here.
the whole squad.
A lot of our faithful teammates are out there in the chat today, so it's good to see that they're hanging around. Niren says worst day was the trade deadline debacle. Niren, we will get to that. Don't you worry.
Yes.
But yeah, number 10.
But the lockout ending was big because it ended sooner than I thought it was going to end.
Right.
I was worried that it wasn't going to end until past Jackie Robinson Day, and I said, how can they go to the anniversary of Jackie Robinson and let that pass and not have a baseball season going?
Yeah,
But they got it done.
It was one thing when it was the COVID year and you couldn't be playing at that point. But, to be locked out and let Jackie Robinson Day go by and then have some kind of a different arbitrary day later in the year when you celebrate it, it's not the same. It was a big relief that they got things started. And then when you look at it, I mean, the start of the season was only delayed by, a week? So I think April 7th ended up being opening day. All things considered,
spring training was impacted more than the season was impacted. And, then we also expected the lockout the second it ended. We thought it was going to be just like Fantasyland, where owners were just going to be buying free agents left and right. And it didn't really take off that way.
It took a little bit of time for sure.
It was a little slower than we expected.
You know what took off right away? Was us, because we were here. I think we had just ended the show when that news broke. And then all of a sudden, Jake, our GM, comes out. He's like, "Are you ready to go to Arizona tomorrow?" I'm like,
"Oh, that's right."
Yeah, I guess so.
Right.
I guess.
Off you go.
Yeah. So that was a big surprise.
Yeah, we were like,
to me.
"Nice to meet you, Ryan. See you later, Ryan."
So I was like, we had been doing the show for a week, and all of a sudden, I'm down in Mesa doing spring training. Like, we hadn't even had time to really plan out how we wanted to do coverage of spring training. It was just go.
There you
go.
go.
Yeah, it was one of those where you had to wing it, but it was also like that was a huge day, not only for baseball, for us, obviously the CHGO Cubs and White Sox, whose jobs and the way we do coverage rely on baseball happening. So that was a big day, and obviously first with the lockout having disrupted the beginning of the year, first big milestone for really any team in baseball.
I would say, so we went from that to waiting for the signing, and then the next thing, because Stroman had happened prior to it.
Just before the lockout started.
Just barely in time. So that was prior to CHGO.
Yeah.
So for our 2022 calendar, it went lockout ending, and then you went to March 18th. Seiya Suzuki signs with the Cubs. 5 for 85. And we were wondering if the Cubs were going to get him. When you look back on it now, Seiya signing, there was a lot of fanfare around it. You know, there was all are the shirts going to be Seiya later? What's the first call going to be for a home run? All those things. We had no idea what to really expect from this player coming from Japan.
Yeah. When
you look back on it now, what do you think of the first season that he had with the Cubs?
When I look at it, it was a good season. It wasn't.
It was positive, is the way I'd go.
Positive.
Right? Yeah.
I think the biggest positive with it is you saw how awesome his like first few weeks, first month even was fantastic. And he won the April Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
And you're like, this guy's gonna be an all-star. This guy, he's about to live up to the contract just this year alone. And then he went through his struggles. He got hurt. He had his ups and downs. But you saw every single time the league started adjusting to him, and he started to go through his extended slumps. He reversed course and ended up getting back on track. And his September and October, the way he ended the year, I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but the way he ended the year was very, very positive. And it was just another, like his third time of like, man, he going through a slump. Oh, then he busts out of it and was hitting the cover off the ball and being the guy that the Cubs thought they were getting when they spent about $100 million when you include the posting fee to bring him to Chicago. So it wasn't an all-star season or anything. No, I mean, maybe those expectations were, if anyone had them preseason, were a little exaggerated. Like no one really expected it. But
we hope, a lot of Cubs fans hoped for like some superstar player to come over. But if he becomes this guy improving each season and you look at a 5 for 85, you will say, what a bargain just based on the last free agency.
Well, and I'm looking at his month-to-month splits right now, 'cause since Ryan mentioned it, you do see sort of he comes out in April and doing really well. He had 4 home runs. He's hitting 279, and then it is kind of like, and I know there's an injury in there.
Yeah.
But you see a little bit of where there's kind of some back and forth where the league adjusts to him. He hit 211 in May, but then turn around and hit 286 in July. Then you see 252 in August, but then it's back up to 282 in September. So you can see that back and forth of the league's adjusting to him, but he's adjusting back. And from a player that's you hope is going to become an all-star player, that's exactly what you want to see. He's figuring out the league as they're figuring him out. And not to mention, he's also learning how living life in the United States and the travel and all the different cities and places he's never been to.
A language that is not his first language.
Right. The language, the brand new set of teammates and coaches. And, there's a huge learning curve there.
Yeah, and you can attest to this. Like, the fact he doesn't know English, but you could still see how, like, funny and his personality still would shine throughout the season. Even when he first got to, Mesa, you could tell the whole, Mike Trout, I love you thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
didn't he pat David Ross on the belly or something?
Something like that. Like, there was like, even though the fact that he doesn't speak the same language, he doesn't speak English, which a lot of us do, especially in the clubhouse, you could still, like, nothing got really lost in translation as far as, like, you could tell he's a jokester, he has fun, he loves baseball, like, all of that still shine through regardless of the fact he didn't speak the same language that we do, which that's as big a testament as anything to, he's a great clubhouse presence, even though he doesn't speak the same language as pretty much every player in that clubhouse. A lot of guys speak English, a lot of guys speak Spanish. I don't know anyone in that clubhouse that speaks Japanese as well. Maybe they
translator.
The translator.
Yeah, I think that's
really
it,
right?
Yeah,
for sure. But that's basically it.
You could see how that could become lonely for a player potentially, but it didn't. It did not seem that way with him.
I just remember something that sticks out. Again, you mentioned the end, which was a positive vibe going into the offseason. In the beginning, remember how he seemed to know exactly what the strike zone was?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and he wasn't going to swing at all at anything out of the strike zone. And that eventually changed. But to watch him show off that ability early in the season was fascinating. And then the adjustments were really good to see at the end of the season. And he was, in the beginning, when he was going through that whole strike zone thing, that when he came out and admitted that he wasn't using any of the video stuff yet.
Yeah.
That he just wanted to see with his own eyes the pitchers in the National League and different teams that they would face. He wanted to see it with his eyes. He didn't want to worry about going back and looking at video. He didn't want to break it all down. So that stuff didn't come until the struggles started to peak up. And then he realized he could use that. But he wanted to see it with his own eyes before he wanted to see it from a technology standpoint.
And it's smart because don't take on too much at once. Given, like we just talked about, everything that he's learning as he plays his first season here, don't add another layer to that if you don't have to, or at least wait to incorporate that later. And I remember him fairly early in the season mentioning in a post-game interview that the types of pitches he was seeing here were unlike what he had been seeing in Japan. He mentioned specifically that, like, there's breaking pitches that guys just either don't really throw over there or don't throw the same way. So some of it was for him is learning how to, what is, when these guys throw this type of pitch here, what does it look like? How does it move? Where does it go in the zone? Stuff like that. And I think, learning how to just see that with your own eyes first and then go from there and then use the technology to help you to the next level.
Right.
Like just going back to the original question, I thought, it was a good season for what it needed to be. Like, no one expected him to be an all-star, and no one also expected him to, like, lead the Cubs to the playoffs or anything. We all knew this is going to be a season for not just Seiya, but a lot of guys to start just kind of developing at their pace and not just going all in to try to make the playoffs or win the World Series, whatever it is. Like, this was the perfect season for Seiya to have come over. I mean, outside of not having a regular offseason, of course, but the perfect season for him to come over and join the Cubs in a season where he could just play right field, play every day, provided he's healthy, and just acclimate to MLB at his own pace. And that's, a guy like Matt Mervis, who we're talking about for 2023, it's a different situation, but it's kind of the same. It's like, that's another guy you don't want to, it's not a season where you need to rush him into this huge role and expect great things out of him. It's just let him get to the major leagues, let him adjust to the game at his own pace, and then you go from there. And that's what 2022 was from Seiya. And so I was impressed at a lot of the things he did. Just adjusting to Major League Baseball and life in America.
So the Seiya signing happens, and then we get actual baseball, which we weren't expecting necessarily. And the opening series, April 7th to April 10th against the Brewers at Wrigley Field, and we had fireworks, right? First you get Kyle Hendricks out-dueling the Brewers. Then you get Nico with the first home run of the season. Like, who had Nico hitting the first home run of the season? Because he's one of those guys you just mentioned, guys kind of trying to prove themselves at the big league level. He certainly did that. And then the asterisk on the whole series, which was the highlight of the series, Keegan Thompson plunking Andrew McCutchen and kind of, it wasn't setting the tone for the Cubs, but I will say it sort of set the tone for Keegan Thompson's prove-it season. Right?
Yeah.
It was just kind of a throw the shoulders back and, I'm here, and you're going to like it.
The shoulder shrug, like chewing the gum. Like,
didn't care that it was a veteran he hit.
Well, that's when Cody started that campaign for Keegan Thompson to be mayor of Chicago. Like,
that's right.
That was that day. But, Jared, you were there on opening day, and it was like, I think the Red Sox and Yankees were supposed to have played earlier, and that got postponed or delayed or whatever it was. So when Nico hit that home run, we were incredibly shocked to see that. But it was that whole series was they came in, weren't expecting a whole lot, and eventually our expectations were kind of proven right that the Cubs weren't going to be a good team last year. But they came in that first series, won the first 2 games against the Brewers. Guys like Nico showed up. Keegan, as you said, kind of set the tone that he's just going to be this guy that comes out and gets outs out of the bullpen. And those were in my opinion, 2 big moments a big moment in both those 2 guys' season. Obviously, it's the first one of the season for each of them, but 2 big moments for them to show, like, hey, these guys, they got something with these two guys. Mm-hmm. They got something with Nico. Keegan might not be a starter moving forward, or that may not be where his trajectory goes. But then this guy's getting ejected was after he had already thrown 2 2/3 shutout innings, and that's what he did all season. That was the first of him being like, I'm this guy. I'm gonna come in, want me to go out for 3 innings and just get a bunch of outs. I'm gonna do it. Like that's what Keegan Thompson proved. And that was the first day that he really showed he has that ability. And then, he backs up Wilson Contreras and plunks Andrew McCutcheon. Like it was a good weekend for those guys.
And I like to see a little bit of that kind of thing from our players sometimes, a little bit of I'm gonna
swag, a little bit of chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, have a little chip on the shoulder. One of my favorite things about watching John Lester pitch was what they called like the red ass. You just you're a little bit angry out there, a little bit mean. Maybe
not as much as Carlos Zambrano's version of it.
He was on an epic level. I'll never forget the game that he tossed the umpire.
Yeah, and he gave him the glasses. Opening day.
Yeah.
And you need glasses.
Didn't he throw his glove out into center field or something?
He threw a bucket of balls in the center.
I mean, he was, not to get us all sidetracked.
Oh, no, I love talking Big Z.
Big Z
I could talk.
There's one of our
Carlos
countdown lists.
Zambrano for a whole episode.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite Cubs players.
Me too.
To cover and watch. Because at that time, his bat was just as exciting. Like when he came up to bat.
Oh, yeah.
The whole stadium stopped.
He was awesome.
Yeah.
The whole stadium stopped.
You're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And just loved his interviews, back in the day when he said he got an injury or something, and he was like, I got hurt because I'm too fat. The
We Stinks meltdown. He got mad. So
it's all good.
The opening series was fun. We had not expected necessarily that. And then May 17th, we talk about Nico, the first homer, proving it. Thompson, we also knew was going to be like a prove it type year. But May 17th, we had 2 major league debuts that I don't know that anybody expected it to be show me seasons for either of these guys. Christopher Morel comes in his major league debut and homers. And then Brandon Hughes makes his debut. And what's the stat, Ryan? First pitcher, modern era.
First pitcher in the modern era to record 5 or 2. So first pitcher in modern era to debut as a reliever, record 5 or more outs that game. Each coming as a strikeout, I think, is the one.
Was this your stat?
No,
is this the one, or that one's later?
I think that was later in the show. This was I want to say it was like ESPN Stats and Info, or Stats by Stats.
Right.
One of those. First pitcher in modern era to record 5 or more outs. Okay, so this is first pitcher in modern era to record 5 or more outs in debut, with each coming as a strikeout.
Right.
That day was crazy because again, you had Morel getting called up for the first time, Hughes getting called up for the first time. So just even pregame, kind of running around, talking to a few different people
and
about
not
these guys.
Big name prospects. They were both like, "Who's this guy? He's coming in. Oh, nice story."
No, they weren't Caleb Killian coming up. Wasn't Brendan Davis coming up. It was like, Morel was a guy that came up just because the Cubs had so many positions that were lacking depth because of injuries that they're like, we need a guy who can play 5-6 different positions. Bring up this guy from AA. Brandon Hughes kind of came up. He was a guy that was doing really well at AAA. A few years removed from being an outfielder, which still shocks me that this guy is now feels like a really good back end reliever. 3 years, 3-ish, 4 years.
Most counted on reliever at the end of the season.
And that's coming off, 3-4 years
Yeah.
of him being an outfielder in the system and almost getting cut because there was no room for him.
Right.
Like that's still very impressive to me. But just that day in general, Brandon Hughes going out and dominating. He came out before, he got in the game before Morel did. So he came out and he dominated, and that was just like that. The energy in that ballpark when he was out there doing his thing was awesome. And then Morel comes in. I think it was the bottom of the 8th.
Yeah. On Cody's birthday.
On Cody's birthday.
The birth of Del Metric.
Yeah, the day Del Metric was born. But he, homers, and I remember one of the things he told Rivas and Contreras that he called a shot that he was gonna homer, not even knowing he was gonna go into the game, but he had told them the inning before that he was gonna home run when he got in the game. And he did it. I think he was the first one since Wilson back in 2016 to do that in his first at bat.
Yeah.
And then you saw the dugout and how, like Wilson specifically, but the whole dugout celebrated. This was a kid that came up. I know there was the story of his freak injury back when he was still kind of working through like summer league stuff in the Cubs, like out in the Dominican.
By the way, Gary Ross is correcting me. He's right. I probably didn't word it right. He's like, Cubs fans who follow prospects knew who he was.
Yeah.
He was top 15. He was not one of your premier prospects in a loaded farm system.
He
it was
wasn't
still
the
a
guy.
farm system that you were rebuilding, and he was number 50. Like he wasn't.
He
wasn't the guy that you were like, oh,
No.
like, Morel's coming up. Like, let's go. It wasn't.
Nobody
enticing
was
in that
looking
way.
for the Morel debut at the beginning of the season.
And I think our perspective on that kind of thing has been skewed a little bit in the last 6 or 7 years because we had some years of, this Javi Baez is coming up,
Right.
Chris Bryant's coming up, Wilson Contreras is coming up. I think we got used to having these like big prospects make their debuts where, Morel was still, he's a guy, but compared to a little bit of what we'd gotten used to when because I remember thinking that too when he got called up in May. I was like, Morel's coming up. I was vaguely aware of the name, knew a little bit
Gary,
about him.
we're not saying he's a no one.
Yeah, it's not.
Again, I'm saying he was you're saying number 15, I believe you. 15 prospect in a farm system you're trying to rebuild. He was not a prospect that around Major League Baseball people were like, hey, did you hear Morel's going to make his debut tonight?
Well,
he's not one of those.
That's when I say it wasn't like, a few weeks later when Caleb Killian got called up and everyone had been waiting for that to happen.
Pounding their fists. When is Killian coming up? When is Killian coming? When is Brendan Davis going to make his debut? Those were the names you were hearing at the beginning.
It wasn't
of the
Morel,
season.
but obviously, and like you said, it was a prove it kind of year. It's like,
Great season.
Okay, this is a new kid. Maybe the average fan hasn't heard of him. Just people that don't follow the Cubs prospects that closely. The average casual Cubs fan didn't hear of him, but he came up and again homered in his first at bat, and then had a really up and down, but still impressive rookie year at 22, 23 years old.
Yeah,
coming straight up from Double-A. Like it was a fun year for Morel.
You consider, he jumped Triple-A and came here. And looked at his, you look at his numbers, and he definitely, the second half was a lot quieter than his first 6 or 7 weeks or so. But even though his batting average took a big dip, still hitting for some power. He had, in the first half, he had 9 home runs, but still hit 7 more in the second half. So, definitely some good things. He was striking out a little less often. So, some signs of development. He's clearly like a talented player. So, I like Gary's saying, if you follow this kind of thing, then yes, he's a guy we knew, but right.
And again, that's when you're looking at the grand scheme of a franchise, an organization, from drafting guys at the very bottom to all the way to the top, your top major league player. Mm-hmm. There's so much more information out there now that gets fans hyped about prospects than ever before. So if you were talking about a number 20 prospect in an organization 10 years ago, you never would hear that name.
Right.
But now you do hear those names, which is fun for sure, especially when a team is rebuilding. So the next day we go up to is June 17th, and there was the 10-game losing streak, right?
Heading into that day, yeah.
Keegan Thompson beats the Braves. Shoves against the Braves.
The Braves.
That was the one where it was like, how I was worried with the Braves being in town and at 10 games. I think I made the statement before the game, this could go to like 17, 18 games.
Well, it was at that point where
it had that feel where this could get out of hand.
Yeah, it was at that point where the Cubs had lost 10 straight. I think the Braves came into that series having won like 14 straight or something.
Yeah, they were
that.
on like opposite trajectories at that point.
And it was, you had the 3 games against the Braves, and then you had 4 or something in Pittsburgh after that, and it was like, this could hit 13 pretty easily, and you never really know what's going to happen against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had already beaten them
they
in
weren't
multiple
playing well
series
against the
that
Pirates.
year. So it was like this series could go on for, this losing streak could go on for a while. And then Keegan comes in 6 innings, 2 walks, 2 hits, no runs, 9 strikeouts. I guess a really good Braves lineup.
Before that game, I think I also said this team might lose 100 games.
I think it was trending that way.
It was
for
looking very likely.
It wasn't going well.
Yeah.
But Keegan, it was one of those where we know he didn't have as much success as a starter than he did out of the bullpen this year. And like I said earlier, starting pitcher may not end up being what he does in the major leagues for the rest of his career, he may stick as that long relief weapon, which we know has become a lot more valuable in today's game. But that game itself showed you, like, hey, he could be a very viable starting pitcher. And if he ends up just being a long relief weapon, you're also really comfortable throwing him in for a start or two if you need it. Like, when you're in a pinch, you need a guy who you can rely on to get outs. Keegan Thompson's your guy. Like, it was one of those games that, like, Keegan Thompson is a good pitcher. He will be a good pitcher in this league. And the Cubs, provided trades or whatever. You never know what's going to happen. But the Cubs have a guy they can rely on for what feels like for years to come. And
you also in that series, you got that nice Contreras brothers moment. It wasn't that same day, but yeah. One that maybe now they can replicate in Milwaukee or St. Louis next year. But yeah, it was a cool moment to see them, get to do that. And I think as the year went on, there was some Contreras fatigue with all the farewells and all that. But that was a cool thing to get to see in person, to be at the ballpark for. When, if I remember right, Wilson came up to bat and William was behind the plate.
Yeah.
And they hugged, and and they both did well offensively that day too. So, just a cool thing to be there to get to see during that series.
And I think they had been in Atlanta earlier, right? And then they didn't play against each other.
They didn't.
Right.
They did the whole the lineup.
We'd already seen
thing.
the lineup card thing. Yeah.
But they didn't actually play against each other.
But this was the first time they were.
So it may have been that game, that Friday. Because that Friday was the day that Keegan pitched, and that was the game one of the series. So
it might have been that game as well.
It might have been that game as well. So
those are our first 5 moments that we remember chronologically in the season. We're probably leaving some out. We'll get to some of those extras later, and we'll do the next 5. But first, Green Ridge Farm, a Chicago local meat and cheese company offering you a better all-natural option, makers of all-natural deli meat, sausages, and their famous meat sticks. Perfect for tailgating, happy hour, school lunches. All-natural meat sticks, hardwood smoked for 8 hours, 16 grams of protein per stick, making a perfect post-workout snack. They come in flavors like chicken, black forest beef, jalapeno cheddar, and spicy chili. If you haven't tried them yet, you don't know what you're missing. They're delicious because they are made from recipes generations in the making. And being all natural, they deliver a fresh, flavorful alternative at snack time. You can always find them in the refrigeration section at Costco, Sam's Club, or your Chicagoland grocery stores. Right now, when you order 3 meat products at greenridgefarm.com, include a pack of their meat sticks in your cart. Those meat sticks are free just by using the code CHGO at checkout. Green Ridge Farm, simply natural meat. Why would you get your meat from somebody in Wisconsin when you can use a Chicago meat company? Doesn't make sense. ComEd Facility Assessments. ComEd Energy Efficiency Program is committed to helping families and businesses in the communities we serve save money and energy. ComEd offers free facility assessments that can help find energy-saving opportunities, whether that's lighting, HVAC systems, commercial kitchen equipment, or industrial processes. An authorized engineer will work with you to develop a detailed assessment plan specific to your goals and needs. They can be done in person. They can be done virtually. They'll last approximately 2 hours. Then within 3 to 4 weeks, customers receive a report detailing energy efficiency projects that they can start working on right away. Each recommendation will include estimated energy savings, cost savings, project cost, potential incentives, and simple payback. So don't wait. Get started saving money and energy today. For energy saving tips, to schedule your free facility assessment, go to comed.com/poweringbiz. If you're ready to sign up for that facility assessment, you can also call them at 1-855-433-2700 during normal business hours to speak to a ComEd Energy Efficiency Program representative. You can also email them, businessee@comed.com. Request an online assessment on their website at comed.com/facility assessment. We are counting down 10 moments from 2022 that we will remember about the Cubs, good or bad, doesn't matter. And we are down to now August 2nd, the trade deadline, the day we waited for over and over and over. And Cody did so many stock going up tweets and stock going down tweets for players throughout a game that the App Store didn't know what to do with that. So it was crazy. And then we get to April 2nd, and we sit here for what we think is going to be the biggest show in CHGO Cubs sports history, at least early on. And
what a day.
Happ is still a Cub, Contreras is still a Cub, and we're left here going, what just happened?
Yeah,
what's going on?
Well, it was funny because, that whole last month, and even before that, Happ and Contreras peppered with questions, trade, blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you feel about it? Would you be open to, all this different stuff? And then it ends up not happening. And, Contreras had multiple goodbyes at Chicago or at Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
Him tearing up, talking to us after a
the
game.
hugs between Happ and Contreras.
Happ and Contreras was a heartbreaker, right?
Man,
And the hugs in the dugout.
It was like a 15-second, 16-second solid hug.
Yeah.
I'd still like to know what Ian Happ was saying to him in his ear, whispering sweet nothings.
Probably.
I can send Connect all the way to wherever you're going.
He's probably coffee recommendations. Yeah.
Now, to be honest, I'm glad Happ is still a Cub. Like, I'm glad he didn't get traded. The Contreras part is confusing to me because I think they'd already decided what they were doing with Contreras, and it still feels like they misread the market or ran out of time.
And I think it's more like they had what they thought was a deal.
Yeah.
And then when it fell through late, there wasn't really a solid backup plan that they could go to quickly enough, and they just ran out of time.
That's what I felt like.
And all they got was the pick.
Because as we've now learned, it was the Astros they had the deal for, I want to say it was, I can't remember the name, one of their pitchers.
But Dusty's the one that was like, I don't want a guy in a contract here.
They nixed it last second, so it felt like they kind of got stuck flat-footed and didn't have anywhere to go after that. We didn't know that at the time. It just felt like, what the hell happened? Like, that's literally what the feeling was like. Well, what is going on? We're watching the clock. And then Ken Rosenthal tweets out like 5 minutes after the deadline, Cubs are not trading in Happ and Wilson Contreras. And we're like,
it wasn't disappointment, really, for me. It was just surprise.
Yeah.
I was surprised because I thought everybody was going.
Well, and in hindsight, I think they probably were much less aggressive in shopping Ian Happ. I think that was not really as much on their radar maybe as we thought it was, at least at that point. But yeah, I think Contreras comes down to as simple as they thought they had a deal lined up. They thought they were, we're doing this. It falls through at the last minute. You don't really have a backup plan and don't have time for calling other GMs and seeing what else you can do. And then it's like, okay, well, now I guess we're keeping you.
Screwed.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, and because I remember, I think Chris Martin was traded that Saturday prior. And then, like, that Monday was an off day, and we were in the office, and that's when Efros got traded for Wisniewski, which, as it turns out, that trade looks awesome for the Cubs and potentially for the Yankees. I know Efros got hurt.
So the last-minute deadline is what we're really talking about. Like, the last hour of the deadline,
it was.
We thought big names on the Cubs were going. Contreras, because we believed and were right that they weren't bringing him back.
Well, you guys were live for like 2 hours, weren't you? Waiting for it.
And Happ, because here's a guy who was playing at an all-star level at that point and a gold glove level, and he only had one more year left on his deal, and we thought, they're deep into this rebuild. They had just gone through a 10-game losing streak. So if teams weren't calling about Ian Happ, I'm surprised.
Yeah, it was one of those days, like as you mentioned, where we're just like shocked. Like you're shocked. I mean, it always takes two sides, two to tango in trades like that. So if whatever the Cubs are willing to give up, or they're valuing guys too high, like that could always nix a deal in itself. But it was like these two had been in, and it wasn't just like us speculating. There have been rumors and reports of like really big interest in both those guys and mutual interest in obviously dealing those guys for whatever
they went through the emotions of it all season.
And and it was I think especially Wilson really expected it to happen because Ryan, as you know, I mean his demeanor in the clubhouse, the way he was with us, was a guy who was thinking he was going to be traded. The day or so before the deadline, I remember a bunch of us after post game stuff were saying our goodbyes. I went up to him and shook his hand and said, "Hey, it's been a joy to cover you the last 6 years." And he had like tears in his eyes, obviously because he likes me so much.
Right. Right.
But yeah, he was a guy who was fully expecting to be traded. So, that wasn't just us kind of hyping what we thought was going to happen. It's what everybody thought was going to happen. But I think too, kind of looking at it the same way, Happ felt a little less so.
Yeah.
he was getting asked about it, but it wasn't the same. And I just really looking back on it, I don't know how much the Hap trade talks were really taking place.
He thought there was something going on, though, because he was saying his goodbyes to people like Bleacher Jeff and thanking the people in the bleachers. Like, if this is the end of my Cubs career,
right,
I want you to know that it was special.
And that's what he said to us, like, after the trade deadline had passed. He's like, it's like, it was your fault. Like, the media is the one that kind of let this narrative run wild, which fair enough. But it was also, again, the rumors and the reports had that, like, teams were reaching out about Hap, and there were definitely multiple teams that had
his name
fits.
was mentioned in a few rumors.
And there was
the White Sox made a mistake if they weren't calling.
There
they needed
were
a left-handed bat and an outfielder.
There were teams that could have used a guy like Ian Happ this year, and a deal just didn't happen. So
Sox were asleep like their manager.
Yeah, there you go. Well,
the next thing after the trade deadline then was the Field of Dreams game, which Ryan went to.
Yep.
Made the drive to Iowa. Saw the players walk out of the corn.
It was fun.
Griffey walked out of the corn.
We picked the right year to launch. Obviously, if we were a year later, I would not have been able to go. But that was really cool. And we talked about the Sox and the Yankees in 2021 and how just like, you got that on the screen. Once we get it there. We talked about the Yankees and the Sox last year, 2021, when it was like storybook, Hollywood written ending, Tim Anderson walk off, and just the first year of it, and it was all super cool. And then we have, the Cubs trying to do it. He's trying to get it on the camera.
That's your placard for where you're supposed to sit.
And it's CHGO on it.
And it's on a sticker in blue Sharpie. Now that you want official.
You're not erasing that.
It's
it's not the Die Hard card, but it's.
Did they permit you to take that, or was that one of those like?
Did you steal that?
I'm gonna just slip this into my. Yeah. Well played.
That's always
slip this into my laptop bag and maybe.
Yeah, right.
If it's not bolted down.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
I'd probably
take it with you.
I probably would have grabbed a couple of ears of corn myself.
It's like the corks I took off the field in 2016.
I have a 2003 cork and a bottle.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are. I think
a lot of corks and bottles in the dugout afterwards.
Everybody's
gone.
I also have a set of 2003 World Series tickets, but that's a whole other topic.
Oh, brutal.
Ouch.
Field of Dreams. So you would give that. You would say that was a nice experience.
Well, I mean, when we go into it and we're like, the Cubs and the Reds are both bad teams. Like, how are they going to do anything to make this worthwhile? And outside of the Harry Carey hologram that everyone else got to see but me, and most people did not like it. The Griffeys coming out of the corn, having a catch. The rest of the Reds and Cubs legends coming out, just the whole vibe, the atmosphere, obviously very, very intimate versus what a major league stadium is. I mean, the whole event was really cool, and it was an okay game. It wasn't a bad game by any means. Wilson, they had the Wilson taking a tumble and thinking he's out, and all of a sudden, hold on, Wilson's got his gear on, he's playing again. So no, it was a really cool moment, really cool game. Just a really cool experience. And, I mean, just as far as was it worth sending the Cubs to Iowa for a baseball game against the Reds when they're both trying to fight each other to stay out of the cellar? Yeah, definitely. And I think, all the players said it afterwards, like, regardless of it's the logistics stink. And, you have one game in Iowa and then you got to go on the road and all that. Like, they left immediately after the game.
But it was a different game in a long season.
It was a fun game.
That's the good part about
it. It broke up the monotony of the season, and all the guys would say, like, do it. Like, anyone that ever gets the opportunity, do it. Any other team that gets invited, take it.
When I was fortunate enough to get to go, I went to the first Field of Dreams game in 2021.
Yeah.
The Yankees,
the
White Sox. Yeah, that was an epic one to watch. Got to take my son. It was a really special moment, and but even this year, watching it on TV, and even though it was not like two contending teams, there's still something really special about it. And I like that baseball is doing a little bit more of this kind of thing because, if you're trying to market yourself as a league, as a product, I think you need a little bit more of play into your strengths. You're not going to be the NBA. You're not going to be the NFL. You can't compete with that because you're just not the same thing. So there are things about baseball that people like and that draws them to it. And having a game in a cornfield in Iowa on a movie set, you're playing to your strengths.
Yep.
That's part of the appeal of baseball.
I feel like baseball is such a nostalgic game more than any other sport.
It's nostalgic. It's the visual
Numbers.
aesthetic of you're out in a field and it's the summer and the sun's shining and all that. Like that's the stuff that people think about. So that's why I love the Field of Dreams game, regardless of who's playing. I think it's such a good event that they put on that I hope it doesn't go away.
I know they're not doing it next year.
It's good to take a break. Frank said it's because they're building Little League fields basically there for other activities.
It'll be
we need to speed up a little bit here. So September 6th, Hayden Wesneski, historic debut, and that's when he came in, he gets his strikeouts, and another guy that showed you a little bit of that swagger, right?
Yeah.
That game was like, we were like, well, the Efros deal looks pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a guy that we could see. He was the first, this was your stat, the first reliever since 1901 to log at least 5 scoreless innings while allowing 2 or less hits, and a minimum of 8 strikeouts in his debut.
Yes.
He was legit. And that was definitely a high point in the season.
It was
one
because
of them.
When we talked about how Morel and Brandon Hughes weren't like these highly touted prospects that the Cubs were bringing up, like they were obviously good prospects and had success in the minor leagues, but they weren't at like this upper tier level of prospects that people were like, just bring them up already. Hayden Wesneski was one that he came over, from the Yankees, AAA, and it was kind of like, okay, like this kid's been a month in AAA, he's doing fine there, like maybe it's time to see what you got in him at the major league level. Came up and immediately validated what the Cubs gave up in a trade for him. It was a very impressive a very impressive outing for him coming in relief. And it was just, he had a great last month. Like his first month in the big leagues was awesome for him. And I guess we'll see where it takes him in 2023. But that first one was like, okay, like the Cubs have something.
Because the Efros trade at first glance, before you really looked at it, was a little bit confusing, right?
Why are you trading your best reliever?
Yeah, he's one of your better guys, and he's not that old. Number 9 on the list, we go to September 20th at Miami. Win number 63 for the Cubs, and if you know, you know.
Yes.
We'll pause for a second to recognize it, and we'll move on. December
March
17th,
63.
Dansby Day, 7 for 177. The next big moment was after the season. It wasn't the end of the season. It was this offseason's biggest move, getting one of the 4 big shortstops, and Dansby Swanson for 7 years, $177 million, and you hope that it is now just adding another good player. You've created a really solid middle defense, whether it's center field, shortstop, second base, catcher. You feel like up the middle defensively the Cubs have really gotten better, and it's a guy you can build around. Mm-hmm. He may not be the superstar player that ends up leading the Cubs to the World Series, but you hope he's one of the really good players that helps lead the Cubs to the World Series.
And given how they're kind of putting together this roster, he doesn't really need to be the superstar player. And like we talked about last week, and you just mentioned the difference in defense that he makes up the middle, especially given that the shift is going away next year, and you've got in your starting pitching staff, not the like high strikeout type of guys. It's going to be a little bit more of ground balls, and you need the defense behind them to gobble that stuff up. So getting Swanson's great for that. And, when we had Ian Happ on the show on December 22nd, if anyone missed that episode, you can go back and watch it. But he mentioned that, just the difference defensively of, when you've got those two, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson up the middle, it's exciting. And for a while there, given the shortstop market, the way it was progressing at that point, we're starting to look a little bit like, oh, man, maybe they may come away empty-handed. Now this whole Carlos Correa saga is turned into its own topic. But
looks like a blessing a little bit.
The
smallest deal, least expensive deal, and a guy who said all the right things, talked about winning and the culture he wants to create. I'm in on it. So some of the things we left out. We left out the 24-0.
Was it 24 nothing?
Was 24
nothing?
I think
you're talking about
what was the score?
They beat
Cody
Pittsburgh.
was at the game. It was
talking about Cubs Pirates.
Yeah,
Saturday
what was the score?
day game. It was 21-0.
21-0.
21-0.
Jim Barista.
Yeah, he's saying 24. That's what I was thinking.
Said
Jim
he
had
was
24. It was 21.
Bachelor party on the rooftop that day.
Good one.
It was.
Nice.
I mean, you were at that game. I
was
believe.
at that game.
Good one.
My scorecard was pretty busy.
What about David Ross flipping the double birds and getting caught on television?
I
my
liked-
number one.
Live
I
TV,
enjoyed that
flipping the
moment.
birds
Yeah.
at Jock Peterson
One of my
as part of a
favorite
joke.
gifts that I've now got on my
That-
laptop forever.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, that was still at that point when, like, the Cubs just didn't give us a lot to talk about outside of trade stuff, because that was
Yeah.
right before the trade deadline. So Ross doing getting caught flipping the double
That was
birds.
good.
I mean,
was good.
Cubs Twitter had a field day. I know Corey was putting out meme after meme after meme on Twitter. Like, that was a good night. Maybe not for David Ross, because he did come out the next day and apologize for it.
That's fine. He also
But
swore on
it was
MLB
fine.
Network.
Yeah.
I
a
also
couple
love-
months later.
For the people on Twitter,
He's fine.
it was a great night.
It was a
Wasn't-
great night. How about,
Wasn't the story though a little bit of? It was like a tongue in cheek.
oh, yeah, he was joking.
yes.
Yeah.
It was
yeah.
just a jock, like a little.
But
Right.
It kind of feels like, why'd the guy have to apologize?
And then
for
I
it?
also loved other moments like that where Wilson taking his bat and circling home plate for the umpire before he slammed the bat down in home plate and then got ejected.
Yeah.
That was another one of those. Wilson telling Christopher Morel, just breathe.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Just
right,
take
yeah.
a breath.
That shot
Right?
was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a
very
great
cool
shot.
moment.
As much as people hate on Marquis getting that shot of
That was a great job.
Wilson right behind Morel
was- yeah.
doing that, like, and that took over Twitter. And then, you know, right after that is when there was the sack fly. It was his first ever
Yeah.
career walk off. I don't remember who it was against, but it was.
They won.
I mean, they won on
Cubs win.
on a walk off
They won.
sack fly.
Fergie Jenkins Day, May 20th, was very cool. The Esteban Quiroz game from September 21st, when I made him my who you got pick. I went
Oh,
Esteban
my
Quiroz, and he
God.
went like 2 for 3 and shocked the world. I got 3 points for it, if I remember correctly.
You gave yourself.
So there were
3
some
points for
there were
that.
some great. We had a lot of fun. The ice cream social could have been in there. Anyways, let's get to some ad reads here real quick.
I just want
Oh.
to hear what Christopher said here. He said, best part of 22 is the pitching development, Nico, and the farm thriving. Ready
Yep.
for 23. Thanks, CHGO. Solid listen on dog walks for all
There you
things
go.
Cubs.
Yeah, I mean the pitching development definitely is one of them. I just couldn't put it in one
Yeah.
moment.
I just think,
right?
more importantly, that
Oh, absolutely, it's the-
dogs love Delmetrics.
That's right.
facts.
Dogs love them.
That is true.
The fans, the tradition, the glory. There's nothing more thrilling than college football. It's bowl season, and the action's far from over. My go-to for betting is DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps. I'm looking forward to a showdown of Michigan versus Georgia in the national championship. That's the showdown I want to see. Although I would take Ohio State versus Michigan repeat and Michigan beating them again. Anytime Ohio State loses, other than no offense to Justin Fields. And right now, new customers can place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. Plus, everyone can combine multiple bets for a bigger payout with DraftKings same-game parlays. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the code CHGO. New members place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win and get $150 if your team does it. That's code CHGO only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility requirements apply. See show notes for details. And you want to go into the new year with some Shady Rays, Ryan.
Well, first of all, back to that DraftKings real quick. I did tell you yesterday, if you listened, over on Mizzou, Kentucky, easy call, never a doubt.
Thanks.
So if you rode my Mizzou pick of the week, you would have won some money.
That's right. Okay.
But also, let me tell you about Shady Rays. Shady Rays never understood why sunglasses were so expensive, so they set out to change it. You don't have to break the bank for quality sunglasses this fall because our friends at Shady Rays have you covered. Shady Rays are premium polarized shades featuring world-class optical clarity, substantial durability, and styles catered to everyone and every lifestyle. The best part about Shady Rays, they have the most insane protection program in all of eyewear, lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your shades on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. You drop them in a lake or off a cliff, anything, they'll replace them. Even with that strong of a protection program, they still manage to make quality that I can tell you, holding in my hand, seems just as good as any expensive pair that I have ever worn. Shady Rays customers seem to agree with over 200,000 five-star reviews. Shady Rays also provides 10 meals to fight hunger in America with every order placed and have donated over 20 million meals to date. They stand behind their product and told our team that if anyone has a problem, they throw profit out the window and do what it takes to get it right. You get free returns and exchanges. You either love the shades or Shady Rays will pay to ship them back. That's it. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is running their deepest deal of the season. Use code CHGO for 50% off 2 or more pairs at shadyrays.com. That's buy one, get one free. You get 2 pairs for as low as $54. Redeem only at shadyrays.com, where you can find all their newest and best shades.
Very nice. Shady Rays, 2023. Looking forward to it. As we look ahead to 2023, do you have a resolution for yourself covering the Cubs, guys, or do you have a resolution for the Cubs, for CHGO Cubs? Do you have any resolutions that you're doing outside of baseball? Taking AG1 every day or something like that. I've got one, and it goes back to kind of our slogans that we talked about yesterday. Let's get this over in less than 3 hours. That's always goal number one. Baseball needs to shorten the game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not cranky old man. I'm just saying we don't all have 3 hours. 3 hours or less, and then this team I would like to see. Here's my low bar for the Cubs this season, 500.
Yeah.
They got to at least be 500 this season. I want to see them get to the postseason. That's what I really want. But the floor for everything has to be, you got to be at least 500.
I agree. We're talking about resolutions for this Cubs team. Like they got to figure out a way to be more competitive. Mm-hmm. Like last year they said it didn't happen. We can you can blame injuries, especially at the beginning of the year, but a lot of teams were dealing with that. So that excuse kind of only goes a little so far. The Cubs have made some good additions that should help them be more competitive this year, and they got to take advantage of that. They play in a weaker division. They know they're not in the NL West where everyone's getting up in arms, or their arms race or whatever they're having over there. They're not in the AL East. They're in the NL Central. It's not. They probably won't win the division this year. Maybe they get lucky and do. Like that's a lofty goal, I guess, that they can possibly compete for the division title at this point. But there's no reason they can't be competitive in the division and compete with teams like the Cardinals and the Brewers. So as far as what I want to see out of the Cubs in 2023, their resolution should be win more games.
Does Jared have one for Stogies? You got a resolution?
Oh, man. I mean, I probably can't say smoke more stogies because I'm probably pushing
the boundaries.
Pushing the boundaries there. But I got into something new this year in that same vein. I had a friend who sent me a pipe.
Oh, wow. You're going to be a pipe guy.
I've been dabbling with that a little bit.
I could see that, like an old sea captain.
My grandpa smoked a pipe. Yeah, it's cherry tobacco you'd smell.
Yeah. So I don't think they'll let me bring that in the press box. Be nice if they did, but
car ride home though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
and you
maybe
could
that's
sing
my resolution.
Some sea shanties in your instead of doing just a picture. That's videos.
Interesting.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, we'll still get the post game cigars. That's a regular thing.
Very nice.
That's always a nice way to cap off covering a game. But yeah, I think as far as the Cubs are concerned, we're all in the same spot. I think their goal, their resolution should be give people a reason to want to watch. Marquee Sports Network has yet to have a season that is worth anybody paying attention to. The first year wasn't really their fault because COVID had its impact, but then 2021 turned out the way that it did. Then you have last year, so this having the Cubs having their own sports network was such a big selling point. It was the Ricketts have been very fired up about this, so now's the time to put the product on the field that makes people actually want to watch your network
and go to the game.
And
this
go to right.
This is the lowest overall or average attendance or whatever it was in 25 years, excluding those COVID impact seasons. Like fans kind of showed you that they're not every game's gonna be filled out or full capacity if you're not a good team. They showed you that.
We saw some games where they would announce a crowd of 30-some thousand, and I'm looking around going, there's not that.
The
many.
resolution should be the climb begins.
Right.
The climb begins in 2023.
Yes.
Back up.
Right.
All the way to the top eventually, but the climb needs to begin.
Enough is enough.
Reach 63 before September 20th.
Yes, please. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook. Make sure you download the app. Use the promo code CHGO when you sign up. Thank you for all your support in 2022. This is the live podcast that we are finishing up, the last one for 20. But we have one more coming on Friday, and then 2023. The climb begins.
Woo!
Thanks for your support, and until then, fly the W. Happy New Year.